Hi, Katzcradul here. You've been asking for a tour of the garden, and I'm going to do that with a little bit of reservation here. We did not plant anything in our backyard this year, not one thing. And the other thing is, Paladin Prepper has been sick a large part of the summer and has not been able to get back there. So there's some things out of place, and it doesn't exactly look very neat because that's his domain. My domain is more of the kitchen and processing the food, that kind of thing. But here goes. This is our Back to Eden garden. There's our little place where our chickens are. It's a very hot day, almost 100 degrees, so they're inside. There's the little portable coop and some of our rain barrels. This is a tiny little section, the little L part of our garden. That is lamb's quarter. It came up wild and we just left it. We pick it for salads, and also Prepper A occasionally will cut a big old stem of it and throw in for the chickens, and they love it. Here's the little path to the shop. You see the corner of the shop right there. And back in this little section is where we have our top bar beehive. And it is a very busy place today. It's a very warm, sunny day. The bees are out collecting nectar. The raspberries are blooming, and Jerusalem artichokes are blooming, so they're all over those, which actually are growing mostly behind the fence. Remember, I didn't plant anything, so this is all volunteer, including this beautiful little sugar baby watermelon. We've already harvested one, and there's probably maybe about 15 more of them. We just spit some seeds out there after we're eating them, and they just come up the next year. There's a raspberry back there and a rhubarb back there. There's a little bit of mess we need to clean up. We've got several projects going on right now. This is where we grow cats. Nah, that's our cat Mabel. She's just resting in a little bit of shade right there. Maybe she'll move for me, because I want Prepper A to show you what's under this vinyl. It just looks like we have trash stacked up back here, but it's not really. It's where we grow slugs to feed our chickens. They love it under that vinyl. And Prepper A is going to show you a couple of them. They're mammoths and they're pretty gross, but she doesn't mind picking them up for me. This one looks like a big old walrus. All we have to do is cut them up, and our chickens love them. They won't eat them if we don't cut them up. They like to taste the guts first. And then here are the ones that kind of are leopard looking. They're kind of spotted, and some of those get huge when they stretch out. They're 8 inches long. Really, really big. Here's another one. Yep. Great place for them to live. We encourage them to stay there. If they come out in the garden, they get killed. Look what's under this piece of siding. Here's some little mosquito eaters. Little toads. Look at that little bitty one in his hole. I just love that. We didn't really want to disturb them because we encourage them to live with us, so she's going to cover them right back up so they'll stay moist and cool on this very hot day. There goes a cricket running across the top there. Thank you, Prepper A. I'm going to spin you around here. I don't want to make you sick by moving the camera too much. There's a volunteer potato. And under these tomatoes, which are kind of growing free form, are a bunch of other potato plants. And we're just leaving them. They'll be the last ones we dig because they're very protected from the sun by the tomatoes, which we love. Can you see the kind of dying vine right there? That's a potato. We're going to cover it back up, and that will stay even after first frost so that we don't have to deal with those right now, and they'll stay nice and fresh, and when we want them, we can go out and get them in October or November. All volunteer tomatoes. They're covered with blossoms. You see them, we have them growing up this cattle panel. They're taller than me. I'm almost 6 feet tall, and so they're even taller than that. I'm going to come in here in a row in between 2 cattle panels where we have these tomatoes growing. They're just freeform. Here's one of my apple trees. I pruned this one down here. Can you see that one down there? I pruned that one, but I saved this other one so I can show you how I'm going to prune it. So I'll do that in the next few days. These tomato plants are covered with tomatoes. I imagine this is how food must have grown in the Garden of Eden, just freeform like this. Here's asparagus that are being protected by tomato plants, and Kentucky Wonder pole beans that came up volunteer. We won't have enough to can, but we'll certainly have enough to eat whenever we want them. I'm going to round the corner here and show you The raspberries are loaded once again. This is very early for them to put on the second crop, but I ate a big old handful of them today. And it doesn't really appear that there's any tomatoes because they're all protected and covered by the vegetation. But if I dig in here and pull it back, you will see that the tomatoes are everywhere. They're loaded. And if you dig past these green ones, you'll find the ripe red ones. And the sun is shining on my camera here, so I can't really see what I'm doing. I'm eventually going to get it in frame. There you go. These are beautiful tomatoes. And they have come back year after year, so they get healthier and stronger and more vibrant every year. And I'm building a better crop of tomatoes every year because only the strongest survive the winter here. So, the Back to Eden method, which I use for gardening, how does it work? How's it going? Is it very successful? I don't know. You tell me. I'll tell you, I kept a log here of how many hours I worked in my backyard garden this year, and I'll share that with you. 15 minutes. It took me 15 minutes to prune that one apple tree. Now, granted, I'll spend another 15 minutes pruning the other one, but that's all I've done. I haven't watered. I haven't fertilized. I haven't sprayed insecticides. I hadn't mixed up concoctions to feed my plants once a week. I've done nothing. The only thing I do is I put on my sandals and I walk outside with a basket to collect the food I want to eat that day. Here's potatoes I didn't plant. All I did last year when I dug my potatoes was to leave the very biggest one, like I've been advised by Paul Gauchi of the Back to Eden method. I left the biggest one and I covered it back up with mulch and I walked away. And so this year when I want potatoes, I go out there and they're under the ground. They've wintered over. I didn't go out there this spring and plant them. I just simply did the very easy thing. Left the biggest one when I dug them last year, covered them back up, and forgot about them. And the yield is tremendous. I plant them in the same place. I dug them up, and they've been growing in the same place for 4 years. Now, I know there will be some of you who'll say, Katz, you can't plant potatoes in the same place year after year. Well, yes, you can. If your soil is perfectly balanced and your plants are happy, they're not going to be growing fungus and mold and get all kind of diseases. I don't have a bit of problem. My plants are healthy and beautiful and vibrant and disease-free. My raspberries, they look beautiful. Did I have some Japanese beetles munching them in the spring? Yes. We didn't have very much rain. They weren't as full of liquid as they should be. That's what the bugs hate. They hate beautiful, healthy, vibrant food that's full of moisture. So my raspberries were a little bit dry, and they fell victim to a little bit of Japanese beetles. But the beetles got their fill, and now look at what's happening to me here in October. They've come back with a vengeance. They're absolutely beautiful. Tomatoes, never planted a seed. Well, I did 4 or 5 years ago, but I've never planted another one back there. What happens is, if I pick a piece of fruit and it's been split open because of rain or something, I just squeeze it, squish the seeds out on the ground, and go on about my business. And next year, those seeds sprout spontaneously and come up, and all I have to do is harvest. I'd say it's working pretty good. Now let's review just a minute. I haven't used a tiller in this garden in over 4 years, which means I also haven't bought gas to run the tiller. I have not watered, not once this year. I have not fertilized this year. Now, other years I've used worm tea and I've used rabbit manure to put on my plants, but this year I didn't do that. I've done nothing, and you see my results. Now here are some other things I haven't done. I haven't pulled suckers off tomatoes. I haven't staked up plants. I haven't tied up plants. And I haven't pulled a single weed. I can't tell you what a believer I am in this method, and to protect the ground and cover it with mulch. We probably have about 6 inches in the back now. Our yard used to be lower than the neighbors, and we'd get a little bit of flooding and pooling of water back there. It doesn't happen anymore because now my elevation is higher than my neighbors. I'm about 6 inches higher than I was when we first started here. I am a believer. I pick all the food I want and never planted a thing. Is there anything closer than what it must have been like at the Garden of Eden when plants sprung spontaneously from the ground? And I'm not living in what would be considered a mild climate. My summers can be oppressive. It's going to be 98 to 100 most days this week. My winters can be very hard. We had some really hard snow, some really cold freezing weather this winter. And yet my garden all came back. Let me quote Paul Gauci here for just a minute. Paul says, and I quote, "When you look at the incredible landscape on planet Earth, all the different terrains, the varying soil conditions, the awesome water features, oceans, lakes, rivers, streams, the waterfalls, the different climates, a huge amount of plants and ground covers, the requirements are so varied. Can one fathom how big a project that was? When God designed the landscape project for planet Earth, he was so genius. He designed it in such a way he'd never have to show up for work. It is completely self-sustaining." Close quote. I believe that to be true. I have experienced it. I've lived it. I've reaped the benefit of gardening the Back to Eden way. If you haven't watched the video, I'll post the link below. I encourage you to. It's well worth your time. Until next time, this is Katzcradul.